All right, welcome back, everybody, for day 4 of the $0 Landlord Bootcamp. Today, we're going to be talking about due diligence setup and operations. So, if you haven't already seen day 1 through 3, then you certainly need to start there as well. But if not, this is going to be really good information as well if you're looking for specifically these topics. All right, so what is this bootcamp? So, the objective is to teach a high-density free course in order to enable anybody to buy multifamily property for $0. That is going to be giving a ton of value to you guys, hopefully. So if you eventually need a business partner, you might think of me. If not, that's fine too. That's what I'm giving away for $0. So take everything I have done and you think I have done is cool, and I'm giving away all for free instead of doing a $15,000 course like a bunch of other gurus. So, and if you need to see anything else, you can go onto the website. You can see a lot of track record about me, but also you can pay me back for this presentation in feedback. That is it. I would very, very much appreciate your feedback. All right, quick stuff about me. I bought a $250K mobile home park in 2023 for $250K, and but it was worth only $250K. But we paid $335K, right? So we way overpaid on it, but that was cool because we got it for $0 down, and we fixed all the management issues in 75 days, which allowed us to triple the net income and get it appraised for $800K 1 year later. So that's a $465K gain, over 2x the value of the property, and we did that 100% remote. Never even been at the property before. We bought that with 2 partners, so it was a lot less work for everybody due to skill leverage, and I have 40% ownership in that, so it's $186K profit. I do about 1 hour a week on average, and that is $3,500 an hour. So what that looks like in perspective, that's a higher hourly than the top 25 jobs in the U.S. combined times 1.5. And I've done this a dozen times. This does not mean I'm a gazillionaire. It means I'm working really efficiently. So that is going to be what I'm trying to teach you. All right, more stuff about me. Managed $7 billion worth of stuff for the Air Force, and I got into multifamily investing in August 2022. I bought for pretty much all of it for $0 out of pocket, and then 80% of the rentals were in the last year. I'm top 200 mobile home park buyers in the U.S. as well, according to that source. So I'd like to think I know a little bit of what I'm talking about when it comes to parks specifically, and also I bought a lot of other stuff like apartment complexes and houses, etc. If you want to see everything I've bought and done, then go to the website. I put all my track record out there so that you can make the decision about me, not me make the decision about me. I've partnered with 6 other people too, and they have all bought their first rentals in the first year for free, and also that was 4 out of 6 now have over 100. So if I say let's go make money together, hopefully you'll do the. All right, today for day 4, this is what we're going to be covering. So we're going to be getting into some nitty gritty stuff, and I have a ton of really good resources I just developed that I'm happy to give away for free. So first, we're going to be talking about earnest money deposit. So if you don't already know what an earnest money deposit is, it is refundable money until the end of the due diligence period, right? And we'll get to what is the due diligence period in a second. Right, so it's non-refundable money after the due diligence period. So it says, hey, I'm going to give you this money, you hold on to it, and if I take too long, eventually I don't get it back. But in the short term, it is refundable. So EMD, when using a property, would be like saying, I'm going to say $500 earnest money deposit to make sure that you realize I'm legit. I'm going to then go inspect the property, and if it passes my inspection, then I'm going to proceed to close. And then after the inspection period, of course, that $500 is no longer refundable. It's a little bit of an archaic system, honestly. There's not a lot of point to having earnest money. And I really feel strongly about this to the point where I say it should be $1,000 every time, no matter what. Right? I don't care if it's a multi-million-dollar property, it's just $1,000 every time, or even lower, $500 or even $100 is fine too if it's a smaller property. But people that say 1% earnest money is 1% of purchase price should be earnest money, that's a little trivial, and I don't think that is really appropriate, and I'll explain why here in a second. So I say do $1,000 every single time. I've done $1,000 every single time, and it's worked out great regardless of the price. So by the way, here's a pro tip: is you can have a clause in your purchase and sale agreement, and it can be perceived as tricky, so you got to be mindful not to have this be perceived the wrong way. But if you just have your earnest money due before the end of the due diligence period, that doesn't mean that it has to be delivered within 3 days now. It just means get it in before the due diligence period is over, right? So that's kind of like a no kidding. Of course, that's going to be the case, but at least this is the way it allows you to never risk having your earnest money out there. So why would you not want to have your earnest money risked out there? Is because a lot of issues can occur with the property or the contract or whatever, something sneaky, right? At the end of the day, you don't want to be a bad buyer and screw up the deal for them by just wasting their time. But at the same time, you shouldn't be penalized, tens of thousands of dollars if you go like one if the title company has a discrepancy, for instance, right? So as a result of that, you'll see the objection a lot of times from agents or sellers that, oh, EMD should be 1% of the price. This is exactly how you combat that. You ever come up with a bunch of challenges like this, but you don't want to be too aggressive. You'd be like, do you think I'm wasting my time with this property? Like, why would you want me to do over $1,000 EMD? I don't understand. Or you'd be like, I'm the only one that's actually giving you an offer of serious mind. Like, I'm not about to tie up $10,000 when I can go close more deals. Is there something you're not telling me about the property, why you would need my money to be refundable versus non-refundable? Also, if I run into a serious issue, well, I'm just going to be backing out anyway. So do you think I'm stupid enough to lose my money? Like, hopefully you didn't think I was going to work for free and also not close and then be silly enough to lose $10,000 after doing all this hard work, after being the only person to put in a deal or put in an offer at all, right? So if you use a couple of those, that's, again, it sounds a little aggressive, but just make sure to use them tactfully, like that you need to. But I've personally never had an issue with earnest money deposit. I don't even get most people that even squawk at it at all, just because they like the rest of the terms of the deal. So earnest money is kind of arbitrary, and it just prevents you from being able to do your deals that you need to. So due diligence period is not the time to overwhelm your seller with a million questions necessarily, right? You can actually ask a lot of these things later, or at the very least, if you are going to be asking a lot of questions, you can do it towards the tail end of due diligence period, perhaps. But anyway, just save as many as possible until after you get a contract is the bottom line, right? So you don't want to swarm them with 60,000 questions before you get on contract. You want to get them on contract, and then you want to start laying on the questions more and more over time. But you don't want to just flood them all at once. So you need to make the due diligence period long enough that you can inspect the property, make a full list of repairs, raise capital, finalize operating agreement, and then also go get the deal like legitimately funded. And that means like money's in the bank, money's at escrow, whatever. You need to do all that before the due diligence period is over. Otherwise, you risk losing your earnest money deposit. And if it's only $1,000, that's not as big a deal. If it was $100,000, right? That's a lot different level of loss. And also, you want to make sure you check the local permits. So again, before contract, you don't want to swarm them with a million questions. Early due diligence, you can give them a good chunk of stuff and to answer. And then at the tail end of the due diligence period is when you'll want to be coming in with the remainder of super nuanced stuff that you somehow weren't able to find. And then single family rentals often don't require permits, but everything else does. So if you do like Airbnbs or something, it's not really like a single family rental for long term, right? That's Airbnbs. So just make sure you're checking your permits before you actually buy stuff. All right, here's what to ask during due diligence period. All right, and I made a nice free master due diligence checklist. And this is compiled over every deal that we've done so far, and we're going to continue to add more things to this. So it's 248 questions and counting, and the questions are going to be updated over time as well. And also, you can literally just send it to your seller, and you just select which questions you want to do and send it to your seller. So if you want the link, it's right there. Go to the website, zerodollarlandlord.com/resources/masterdd, and it looks like this, right? It's a lot of questions. The goal is not to overwhelm your seller. The goal is to have a list of every possible question you might need to know, and you use discretion on whether or not it's a good question to ask. So if you need it, go on there. It's on the website. And then please do contribute questions too. If you think there's like a change that needs to be edited or anything, like just let me know. Use the form on there, and it'll be like a really, really solid resource for everybody. Okay, due diligence period. If you can't see the property in person, then what else do you do? Right. So then you get what's called the boots on the ground. So you're going to get somebody that just is out there. They don't necessarily need to be a business partner. A business partner could be boots on the ground, but usually when you see the term boots on the ground, it's just somebody that run around and take photos, right? Just get a feel for what the property looks like. Maybe you want to do that before you jump on a plane. Maybe you want to do that and not go there in person at all. That's fine, right? So use time leverage. So you can't go see the property, or if you were, it's going to take you a ton of time. Just get somebody else, right? Just hire them. Somebody does need to see the property at the end of the day, right? I don't care who it is. It could be you. It could be somebody else. So you can use a system that we do, which is by using a lot of Google Forms to reduce your email traffic. So you can get a lot of possible people that could go look for, could go take photos and be boots on the ground. So we do that through code leverage, right? So this is what it looks like. You got Craigslist, and then you have a Google form that you post on Craigslist. So really the arrow should be pointed the other way. And it's something like this, right? Take photos. So you just post in the ad on Craigslist and you say, hey, I need somebody to go out and take photos at this city. You don't need to give them a property address. You just say, hey, at this city. And you're saying, hey, I'm going to pay you $40, $20 up front, $20 on the back end. It's got to be electronic, and I need you to upload them into a Google Drive folder. And the reason why you want to do Google Forms is if you look here, 17 responses on this particular one, right? I did not get 17 emails. I got 17 responses. There's a huge difference. All right, so if you want something like this, again, it's on the website. I got a bunch of stuff on there. So it's all free too, by the way. So there's not like a money catch or anything like that. All right, closing period. You can go into contract with just you and then assign it later, right? So this is not for, I'm not talking like wholesale it off. You could also technically wholesale it if you have the assignability verbiage. But typically what we'll do is we'll have whoever's the acquisition point of contact or the acquisition lead for a property is going to be the one that actually gets it under contract. And we just do one person because if you have an LLC that has to, if the contract is in the LLC, then the LLC has to sign for it, / all of the members of the LLC potentially have to sign for it. So it's just a lot simpler if you have one point of contact because it's just one person. You can do operating agreements, et cetera, in order to have one person have the authority within the LLC. But the bottom line is you generally want it just starting with one person, and then that one person assigns it off later, right? And if you're getting sketched out of whether or not that person's going to be your partner, like you probably shouldn't have them as a partner. So, like i.e. if they're going to just not close the deal with you. If you're using a bank as well during your closing period, you need to have a financing contingency, right? Banks can screw up. Banks can not do a good job at the end of the day. So this would extend your closing period by like an extra 15 days or whatever you have in there that says, if I can't get lending correctly through this bank, I need to have a financing contingency that's going to extend the period of performance so that I have an extra 15 days to close or 20 or whatever. What I typically do is I just say, until I get satisfactory lending as determined by the buyer, right? Again, this is on the seller to figure out if they want to, run it through attorneys, et cetera. But it's like, I just say, hey, until I get satisfactory lending, that I'm the one who determines what's satisfactory or not, then I need a financing contingency up until then. So that just gives me basically unlimited runway in order to do that. And obviously, if I can't get any lending, then I wouldn't want to buy the deal anyway because I can't. So that's assuming if you're using a bank. Make sure to run all email communications too with escrow and closing attorney through one email chain, right? So if you do a million email chains, then it is just going to be chaos for everybody and nobody's going to have a good time, right? This is what's going to happen is your inbox is going to look like that and your attorney is going to be like that, and it's not going to be good for anybody. Plus, they probably won't want to work with you twice if you're just all over the place and very disorganized. So keep it simple for everybody. All right, setting up the property. This is Wells Fargo. This is my Wells Fargo accounts. Again, notice it's plural and it keeps on going. I just had to crop it off. So every single LLC has its own bank account, right? And every single LLC has its own property. So it is a lot easier to use it with Wells Fargo because you can open with partners remotely. So an issue that I've ran into is with like Bank of America for, it's like a major bank. It's not like it's a tiny bank. If I was opening with a partner in Maryland and I was in, Georgia, they would have to require that we're both there in person in order to open it. It's not an issue if you're trying to open one account. That's fine because they got branches everywhere. But for some reason, Bank of America wouldn't allow me to go into a branch and sign and then my partner to go into a branch and sign. They were requiring that I would have to fly to my partner and then sign, which is just bonkers. So Wells Fargo does everything through DocuSign. So that's why I recommend use Wells Fargo. If you try literally any other bank, you're probably going to have an issue by comparison if you're dealing with a partner who's out of state. So Wells Fargo is really, really simple to use. But I don't do like, hey, this is the best in broker firm or whatever bank. Like I rarely ever do like a sponsorship, so to speak, of a particular financial institution because they're always generally the same. But Wells Fargo is legitimately very easy to work with. And I can't imagine why Bank of America doesn't allow that. It's just crazy. And you can do all the LLC accounts in one place. It's really easy. Just because somebody else is on the same LLC does not mean they have access to all your other accounts. Like it's segregated information like that. So you have your own profile. Okay. And then we use Wells Fargo as our standard procedure. All right. So you want to have 3 manager options ready in advance as well. So that's going to be really, really critical to do because if you have one manager that quits, then you're going to have to roll on to a second one. So when you are going out and looking for management and you're saying, hey, I need a property manager for this property, that is the time to get multiple options, not later when your manager sucks and then you are posting on Facebook, hey, I am looking for 3 extra managers, because then your manager might see that and then they're going to say, what the heck is this, right? So that's why at the time of acquisition, you need to get some really solid options. And honestly, I would go beyond 3. I would try to get as many as possible because you'd be surprised that sometimes you can burn through these managers really quick because they aren't aware of what they're getting into. Sometimes if it's a sketchy property, if it's not a sketchy property, then it just might not be in their bandwidth to handle it. So you really want to make sure you have multiple management options. And then also have multiple contractors ready, right? Don't just settle for, I got one guy. It's like, dude, you should have as many as you possibly can. The risk of all the profit going out the window happens if you have no contractors, or if you have no contacts, or if you have no management or something stupid like that, right? So Craigslist is good for handymen, and not really specifically like contractors. But if you want quality, then you're going to have to go get a couple other bids. So it just depends on the project, right? If it's a Class C or Class D even neighborhood, you probably don't need the Ritz-Carlton of contractors. But if you're doing a Class A apartment, then you probably don't want Craigslist, right? Google Forms, by the way, regardless of whether it's Craigslist or not, is, again, the best way to automate a lot of this stuff because it reduces a lot of your email chatter. And a quick note too, by the way, so for the Wells Fargo, that's typically business checking accounts is what we do, and we just do the base level. We don't do any of the fancy Premier or whatever checking accounts. It's just what's the basic business checking account. That is it. We don't even bother with the savings or whatever else. And I could talk about personal finance too, but I think savings accounts are actually kind of dumb because you should just have like a Roth IRA or something instead be your personal savings account, because a savings account is really there for a rainy day fund. So otherwise, there's not much function to having a savings account, but that's a totally different topic. All right. Operations. So this is communication, do's and do nots. So starting with the don't do's. Do not personally text people. If you are operating as a business, email or text from your personal is something you should also not do, right? You are running a business, not a social group chat. So make sure that you are running it as a business, which means you need to email everything through your LLC's email, right? So if you're buying a 50-unit building and you're going to call it, I don't know, whatever, Cheetah Property Management, I don't care what you call it, LLC, right? That's like Cheetah Management LLC at gmail.com would be something that you would want to set up, right? And then you're going to run all of your email communications through that one email so that you understand exactly what property that's related to, and also mainly so that your partners can help collaborate. Right, so your partners can now send as Cheetah Property Management or whatever it is. So you really want to set up a new LLC every single time, especially if you're working with new partners. You don't have to do this on every time, but it is highly recommended that you create a new email account. There's a max of like 10 with Google. So here's just a couple of mine, but eventually I was not able to do it. So I have to open different sessions and I have to manually log in each time. That's an issue for if you got too much property and you're just balling out and you're like, oh my God, I got 50,000 email accounts, right? I got 12, 13, 14, something like that, right? So it's not usually an issue because a lot of these, there's an email point of contact. But at the beginning, don't worry about do I have too many email accounts? It's fine, right? I'm sure there's a better technical solution out there. And if you have the same group of partners that you keep buying with on repeat, then it's probably fine as well. And you could just start using, whatever you call it. So we have one that's called BSP, and that's because the three people that are the partners, last names start with B, S, and P, right? So we could actually use that for a different property if the three of us decide to buy. So just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, though, it is smart to keep your property separate via email. All right, operations. So here's generally what you want to be doing for your meetings. You want to do it weekly. And you want to do that amongst your general partners. I can directly point to every single property that does well and does not do well, and it is the ones that meet often versus don't meet often. Obviously, all the ones nowadays that I'm on, I have it standardized, so we have it on every Thursday at the exact same time. We all meet as general partners, right? But I've been on projects before where we did not meet every week, and what do you know? They didn't turn out as well, right? The issues didn't get fixed on time. We had tenant issues, we had contract issues, etc. This is one of the defining characteristics of why we do better than a lot of other groups is literally because we just meet once a week. Everything is on a weekly at a minimum. I don't care if there's one thing to talk about, we still meet, right? I would use some software as an interface. Remember, like I said, don't be using your personal. So Discord is my business. That is where I run all my communications for business through. I do zero social on Discord. So that's all. This is kind of what it looks like in our server, just for a couple of our different accounts that we have going on. So we just have a different chat set up for everything. It has different permissions. Yeah, and then also for your tasks, you're going to be running over your tasks at your meeting. So remember the workflow POC or workflow lead like we were talking about the other day in team structuring. I believe that was either day 2 or 3, or day 3 rather. So that's going to be the workflow POC is the one who's running the meeting, right? So they're making a list of all tasks, including all the updates on the tasks, right? So here's a good example of how we run it. This is just one line item as a tasker, right? So if the tasker was list property with agent, right? Then we have the notes on there. Okay, on 220, person A says the following. Okay, I found 3 acceptable agents, right? Person B, etc. Person A, it's like a chat log on that one particular item, and we just add a new line every single time there's an update. The tasker, very short and sweet. It's not a million bits of context. It's just what is the tasker, but it's very specific. And if you need to add more notes in there, then they're like, okay, as a team, we decided this meant blah blah blah. Priority, you probably want to establish some priority. Then on the left side there, if you notice, under person A, B, C, D, it is very clear who's in charge of that tasker. Person A is the one responsible to do that tasker, and person B is the backup. They are number 2. And then clearly, is it done or not? So I would run literally every single tasker you have in your entire life that you do with somebody else as on the same company. You need to have an organizational system like this. I prefer Excel or Google Sheets for basically everything. That's just me. Maybe you find a different workflow, but if you don't make it explicitly clear who is responsible for that particular tasker, then it just may not get done. And additionally, imagine a person A, keeps on pushing the due date back. Right, and they're like, oh, well, it's due on April 17th, but now instead you see the notes saying like delayed, and it's like 5 iterations later, it's, oh, sorry, I didn't get around to it this week. That's going to be an issue because, but at least now they are the one causing that. You can literally look at the record for that tasker. So I used this in the government when I was working in my W-2 job in order to galvanize things to go like 500 times faster. It was nuts because everybody actually suddenly had accountability for their taskers. And here's the thing with this. You are also accountable on there. If you are person A, everyone sees your updates now. So be a servant leader and make sure that you have the same standard of quality for yourself as you expect for other people. And by the way, you don't have to be the CEO or whatever on the project. Like it's okay to be number 2, number 3, etc. But everybody works well together if you do a system like this. And I've partnered with like a dozen people at this point. So like I was talking about the other ones for zero money, that's like 6, but like I partnered with a lot of other people too. And this system works incredibly well with all personality types. So except maybe like one of the 16 personality types. I don't know, but somebody probably hates it, but the vast majority of people prefer it because it's very organized. All right, operations. So for your files, you have to keep your files organized. Otherwise, nobody else is going to be, or nobody else can help, right? If I'm the only one that knows where all the receipts are, but I'm out of office and somebody needs to file whatever financial report, they're going to have to bug me unless I put it in a folder that makes sense, right? But if I'm the one that made the folder and I put it in some random location, then they still can't find it, then that's still going to be something they hit me up on. So in order to reduce the amount of chatter of where is this, where is that, then I have a free resource here, which is the file structure. So this is the big 7 that we use. So just take a minute to look there. So it's LLC and administrative, which is going to be everything that's super legal basically. Your acquisition stuff is all going to be in one folder, and that usually goes dormant after close. Like you don't have to go and after you close on the property, you don't need that a lot. Your finance and your tax is going to be anything financial. Your accounts folder is going to be stuff like water company contract or lawn care or whatever, or if you're doing updates to a limited partner, we put those in there, right? So it's kind of like the miscellaneous folder, but it's got everything nice and neat in there. Management, same deal. It's well organized, got all the leases in there. Property records could be stuff like maps and photos and whatnot. And then finally on disposition, when you do end up going to sell the property, you're going to need to keep that organized too. So if you want everything on there, it's that's basically what it looks like on the right. That's just for like LLC and administrative, and then acquisition files, etc. So 100% free. I highly recommend everybody do this, and I would take it even a step further. And just instead of just doing for real estate properties, I would like try to make your own file architecture to apply for like your life, or like just get really big picture with it, because you can stay very, very organized. All right, hopefully everybody's learning. If you have not learned anything, or you don't think about anything differently, then good for you, and you can come off mute and say it. I would love to talk to you and learn from you. But otherwise, you need everybody to pay me. If you have thought about at least one thing slightly differently, then you can pay me in feedback. If you go to zero-landlord.com/feedback, please do. I unfortunately did not get as many feedback responses as I was hoping, because I got a lot of positive feedback, but I did not get much negative feedback. I care about negative feedback because I want to know what to do to improve this. So roast me, please, by all means. Join the email list as well, and there's a community for learning, networking, and deal reviews. Deal reviews are on Wednesdays, so we will give you full review of what is going on with your deal in order to make sure that you're structuring it better. And Tuesdays is networking. All right, operations. This is my favorite file of all time. It's called the MDoc. So MDoc stands for master document, right? So what we do with our MDoc, and I have this for every project that I've ever done, and we'll continue to have one of these for every project we've ever done, because it's insanely good for data management and collaboration. It's honestly, and I have one of these just for my personal. So I have my personal master doc, which has like everything in my life on it. So I keep all information on one Google Sheet as much as humanly possible. And then I can do stuff like keep my contacts well organized, right? So it's a one-stop shop for most data, not every piece of data, because it does say all info there, but like you could just include a link to a different, Word doc or something instead of like literally building the Word doc out in Excel. That's kind of a little odd, right? So it's for most data. If it can go on there, put it on there, right? So I'll show you why this is effective here in a second. But you don't want to have information in two spots, because if you have it, and this is true of anything, it doesn't matter if it's like an Excel sheet or whatnot. If you have, if you have two different leases and they're both named the exact same, but they're slightly different and they have the same timestamp, you don't know which one's more accurate, right? And you might be able to remember off the top of your head, like, oh, duh, well, this one's the more accurate one. But when you have 300 files, you're going to have a really hard time keeping up with stuff. So try to expunge any and all data unless it is specifically like just have one copy at all times. So if you're going to have one piece of information, i.e. what's the phone number for the seller or whatever, you're going to want to put that one spot, which is going to be your master doc. Here's a bunch of stuff you can include on your master doc. It changes over time depending on if you're in acquisition mode versus if you're just managing the property. But you can put stuff like your taskers for your LLCs. You can put your PM tasks for your property manager. So that's like shared, and they can actually interface with that as a Google Sheet for their taskers and their to-do list. You have your unit data on there as well. So it's going to be like, what's your rent roll? What's like the unit type? What's the issues with the unit? What's the tenant's name? What's the phone number, et cetera, right? It's all in one spot, very easy to get to. You put your profit loss on there as well. It's just so that when somebody says, hey, I'd love to put in an offer on your property, you're just randomly going to get that phone call one day. You can just send them your P&L because it's already ready. 2024 transactions as well. You could, for 25 or whatever, right? You can just have your transactions. And what I do is I just paste it from Wells Fargo. I just paste it in there, and I'm going to be creating this resource later. But you just drop the CSV file in there basically that you can download off of Wells Fargo, like the Excel one, and it will just automatically create your profit loss statement, so you don't even have to like do anything. Your debt schedule, you got to keep up with how much debt you have. So it's like what's your current equity in the property, like what month is what due. That's very important to have. Your contacts, you're gonna have a lot of contacts. You're gonna have like the maintenance guy, you're gonna have the lawn care guy, you're gonna have the seller, you're gonna have the attorney, you're gonna have the whatever. It's like you're gonna have a lot of contacts, so make sure you put those all in one spot. Your administrative stuff. So again, we create new LLC every time. So if we have a water account with company A, that's company A's login for the water account, we put that one spot because whoever has access to this, because they're a partner on the deal, they all need that login, not just one person. Because if you're that one guy, then everyone's going to be calling you. So we put like all the usernames and passwords for that company, specifically that stuff, like on the admin tab. So I'll be giving out a free version of this here soon. I want to make sure it's really, really high quality first before I just pump it out, because I know what's going to happen is people are going to use it. They're going to use it really well, and then they're not going to want to change from that, right? As soon as they get used to a system, they want to stick with it. So that's why I want to actually make sure it's really good first before I punch it all the way out. But I swear by master docs all the time. So, okie doke. Repairs versus CapEx. So, repairs and maintenance, also just repairs, whatever, right? That is a routine expense to upkeep the property. So you'll see it referred to as R&M on a rent roll sometimes, or on a profit loss rather. But it is routine expenses. Right? So stuff like repairing a unit after move out, filling potholes, etc. Right? Those are usually going to be considered repairs and maintenance, because it's just going to be on like what is the average for the year. And that's typically going to be written off as an expense. That's not going to be what we call CapEx, which I'll show you in a second. Right. So if it's written off as an expense, you're saying, hey, this is an expense that we have to deal with the property, then that would impact your net operating income, your NOI. That also means it impacts your taxable income, which is not actually super great if you are trying to get like a bank loan, for instance, and they say, well, it looks like you didn't make a lot of money this year because you did a lot of renovations. Like, well, yeah, but I counted that as an expense. All right. The other category is CapEx. Right. And it's kind of like up to you on how you want to call these things. If you're renovating a unit, it's like, is it an expense or is it CapEx? That's kind of up to you on how you want to do it from a tax perspective. So just talk with the CPA. But CapEx is additions to the property, right? Like things that you're adding into the property or building on the property. So if you are renovating a unit all the way, that could be considered a CapEx because it is written off via depreciation. So you can do, this is very nuanced stuff, but it's called cost segregation study. So you're basically saying my floors are depreciating at a 7-year rate versus my buildings are depreciating at a 27.5-year rate. So you can get really fancy with the tax structuring, specifically if you call it CapEx. If it's repairs and maintenance, though, it's just that year it counts as an expense. Of his CapEx, you can depreciate it. So either way, you still get the tax advantage, but it just depends on your situation on which years do you want to have a lot of income, basically. There is technically like guidelines on like what is considered repairs and maintenance versus what is considered CapEx, but I just want everybody to keep that in mind. It's like if you're renovating stuff or if you see a freshly renovated whatever building and you look on their financials and it has a bunch of repairs and maintenance, it might actually be CapEx that they're mixing in there and unfairly hurting themselves by calling it a lot of expenses. So a little bit of distinction on these two categories. But yeah, the tax structure basically is the main factor there, right? It's expense versus depreciating. Okay, so if you're doing CapEx or repairs and maintenance, you need to have a work package that lists all the repairs, right? So you want to make it really, really easy. So here's an example, right? You got to make sure you define what right looks like. Paint the walls, right? Great. Most people probably know what that means until you run into somebody who's 2 standard deviations below normal IQ and you're like, holy crap, they don't understand what I'm saying. And you'll run into people like that, or maybe they're just having a weird day, or maybe they're busy, or they got something else, or they just didn't understand what you're saying, right? So it's not a good definition by any means. You should use something like this instead. So just an example, it's like, ensure the drywall and all surfaces are cleaned and like fully repaired without visible texture prior to painting. Use exactly this RGB color and make sure you use a primer. Like don't have any stains afterwards, right? It's very clear because you can use that definition afterwards when you're going to hold up the definition and say, well, this doesn't look like it's right. And then your contractor is going to be like, oh, but like I painted the walls. That's what you told me to do. And it's like, well, that's on you for not being specific enough by explaining it. So this is just for painting the walls. If you want them to repair the sink, be specific enough that you can hold them to a standard afterwards. So, and this is a resource, by the way, I'm going to be throwing a resource out there at some point, which is going to be a bunch of work packages depending on the asset type. So it's like if you want to just flip a mobile home unit or if you want to flip a house or whatever, it's like, boom, here's your whole package. You're just going to throw it at your contractor and they're going to read it and say, wow, that's amazing. I know exactly what to do. And that's going to be for free. So I'm not selling any resources here or anything. Okay. Return on invested capital is ROIC. This is a really important concept because we want to understand how do we know if it's a good deal or not to repair that one unit or to fix that whatever. So an ROIC for an action is the net value change divided by the cost n minus 1. So what that means is basically like what is the percent profit on that one thing that you're doing, right? So by the way, the change can be value added or value perceived or value decrease prevented. We're talking about what is the outcome at the end of the day, right? So if we're saving property value by fixing something, then we're going to call that value decrease is prevented. If somebody thinks that it's going to cost, that the property value is going to decrease unless you do X, Y, Z, then that's a perception. And then if you're like legitimately actually increasing the value because you're building another building there or something like that, then that would be value added, right? So again, it's just change in value. Don't overcomplicate it. But yeah, so here's a couple examples here, right? So if a water line costs $500 to replace, future buyer might say it's going to cost $1,000, right? Just because they're being cautious and they want to be a little careful during due diligence, like you should be if you are the buyer, right? But I'm just throwing this out there as an example if you're selling a property, right? So that's a negative $1,000 perceived value because they're perceiving it to be $1,000 versus you could just repair the item for $500 repair cost, right? So that's a 1x, and then minus 1, I'm sorry. So that's a 1x ROIC. So what that's saying is you're going to make a 1x return on fixing the pipe for $500 because somebody else is going to ding you on it and say that's going to cost $1,000. You're like, but I have a quote for $500. They don't care about the quote. They want it fixed. So if you just fix the thing, you're basically going to double your money, i.e. make a 100% return, i.e. a 1x, right? So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense here on return on invested capital. So this should be like a litmus test on like, do I do this thing or not? Right? If you add a fence, if it's going to cost $1,000 and a future buyer doesn't want it and is going to say, oh, dude, it's going to cost $500 to remove it, right? Then you actually have a negative ROIC. So that'd be $500 perceived value, or a negative $500 perceived value, right? Because it's going to cost $500 extra bucks to fix it, divided by the cost of actually building the fence. There's then going to be a negative 0.5 ROIC. So that means you're going to have a negative 50% return. Okay, so there's a lot of division and whatnot here, but let's look at it in a different scenario. So a vacant unit costs $3,000 to get rent ready, right? And we're just going to call it 35% OPEX and an 8 cap, just for the sake of the argument here. Right, so if you didn't already know these formulas, go to day one. We talk about NOI and cap rate and OPEX a lot. All right, so like I said, assume those. Assume $1,000 a month fair market rent. So then that's $1,000 a month times 12 months in a year equals 12K gross, right? And then 12K gross at a 35% OPEX equals 7.8K NOI. And we already said it's 8% cap rate. So that's going to be a $97,000 500 net value change in the scenario. So if you say that divided by the repair cost minus 1 would be a 31.5x ROIC. So it's a pretty good ROIC, right? It makes, hey, we're going to 31x our money. So technically 32.5x, I guess, but then you're going to make a 31.5x return on it. So obviously this is something that we should do. If it's $3,000, get rent ready and bring that unit online, and we can rent it out for $1,000 a month, given these values. That's something we should very obviously do, right? But now we're going to look at things that we might not obviously do. Right, so if we have 2 units, one of them is this unit, let's call it, right, 31.5x ROIC. Then we have another unit. We're like, well, okay, here's the scenario here. $1,000 a month is their current rate, but they're saying, I'm going to move out, I swear to God, unless you get me a new washer that costs $1,000, right? So it's also going to be $3,000 to get it back online, and then it's if they moved out, it would be $3,000 a month. But if they did move out, you're saying, great, I can rent out for $1,200. So assume 35% OPEX and 8 cap as well. So let's look at the loss of value scenario that would happen, right? So you just say $1,000 a month that you lose, which at the above ratios equals that. That's a $97,500 loss, except you can fill it back in with $1,200 a month, right? So the gain of value in the scenario would be $1,200 a month, yada yada, gross. That's our net that we'd have given those estimations, which equals a gain of $117,000 gain. So what is our net value change? Right, our net value change is we gain $20,000 of value roughly if they did move out. So we actually would be okay with that if that happened. So, whoops, sorry. So if we said a net change value divided by, and I apologize, I should have had that as 3,000, not 1,000, divided by a $3,000 repair cost, because if they moved out, we'd use that scenario, then that would be probably about like a 5x ROIC. So not as good, basically, right? So we could run both scenarios, but again, apologies on the clerical error there. Okay, so let's look a little bit more here, right? So you can clearly rank one item as better to do than another. So you can say, I can fix the water pipe, I can add a fence, or I can maybe repair the unit. So you got to execute everything in order of high ROIC to low ROIC. Like that just makes sense. Like do the high return items first, right? So if you're leasing something out that is pretty much ready to go, then it's not really going to cost you hardly anything, right? Except for like referral and management fees. And I'll be building out an ROIC calculator here, but our top items, usually when we're buying a property, we have like out of our stack, it'll be like the top, I don't know, couple items is going to be between 200 ROIC all the way down to like 20 ROIC. And then our mid tier is like 20 ROIC all the way down to like 5x, right? Which isn't as good, which I know that sounds like, pentuple your money. That's what a bad return. But we try to hit the really high hitter ones first. And the total average amongst all things you could do, that's going to be like basically like your profit at the end of the day. So that's why we say we make X percent, 52X on the whole property. It's a 52X on the whole property because we had a lot of 200X items and also a lot of 20X items or whatever. Okay, here's a quick case study. This is how we 50,000X some cash. Not kidding. You'll see in a second. All right. So it's $8,000 to fix one of these units that we had the other day, right? Super gross, super trashy. The guy lived like a rat. So it would be $8,000 a month or $8,000 to fix, and afterwards we figured that we could probably rent out for $800 a month. All right, so given this type of unit, we're going to call it a high expense ratio due to high repairs and maintenance, because we're assuming this isn't like Class A living. It doesn't really look like Class A living. So we're going to say it's a higher expense ratio because they're going to tear stuff up. And then also we're going to say a 10% cap rate because it's going to cost a lot more time to fix up stuff. And then this is after, right? So how do we get there without spending a dime? What we did is we sold it to a contractor for $1, and then we just charged them $400 a month, right? $1. That was our cost or price or whatever, right? So it's 30% OpEx and a 7% cap rate is what we're going to assume afterwards, because it's very low maintenance. We don't have to deal with hardly anything. The guy owns the house, right? But we just charge them $400 a month in perpetuity. So this is $3,360 a year NOI, and we have literally like a 47,999x ROIC, because it costs like basically $1. Technically, it'd be like infinite, really, right? So the two differences here you should look at is, it's a higher dollar amount on the left. If we could have fixed it up, it would be $4,800 per a year in net. Versus on the right side, it's slightly less net, but it's like insanely efficient. And that's what we're trying to talk about here, is how do you get like the ridiculous dollar an hours with the ridiculous return on cash? So when you have a bunch of 50,000x ROIC items mixed in with a couple of like 2x items, then you're going to average out like 500 or something. It just depends on what items you have going on there, right? And nobody wants to deal with this like absolute crapple basically on the left, right? No fix and flip investors is going to be like, yes, this is what I live for, right? And that looks really gross, but we just outsource it to a tenant and we let them handle it instead. This is a mobile home park, by the way, that's just for reference. So that's why there's like a $1 a month is the lot rent versus the home. We actually just sold them the home for $1, right? And by the way, that was really more of like infinite because we already owned the unit, but I just put like $1 in there. Okay. So we're doing pretty good on time. All right, so I'm going to go over some concept reviews here real fast. So how much should your EMD be at the end of the day? If you guys remember, it is $1,000 or less every time. I should have told this earlier, by the way. We went under contract on a $17 million portfolio one time, and the agent was like, hey, where's the EMD? I understand. I was like, dude, how many people are putting in on a $17 million thing? Like, yes, if I say I'm good for it, I'm not wasting my own freaking time. Thanks, right? No issues after that, right? $1,000 EMD every single time. We did not end up wanting to close that particular deal, but the point is we went under contract with $1,000 EMD. So yes, it is totally possible. Just, don't be doing high EMD. What do you need to do during the DD period? You need to do a lot. So that is going to be inspections, repairs list, capital raise, operating agreement, and then you actually got to get the, no kidding, money in the bank account / in escrow. I would highly recommend you do all that during due diligence period. You don't have to, but it is very smart to do all of that during the due diligence period. So work as fast as humanly possible when you get to that. All right, what questions do you ask during DD? You got to ask a lot, but make sure you're asking the minimum before you're under contract. So ask most of the stuff later. And again, if you need that, resources right there, $0landlord.com/resources has everything you need, and that's the master list. All right, how do you communicate with escrow and closing attorney? That is with one chain, one email chain. Do not try to overcomplicate it. If they respond with a different email chain, that's fine. Just you can reply, but like really just try to strive to say, hey, escrow company, we're going to try our best to keep this in one chain. Recommended bank for properties. I literally get no kickback or anything. Trust me, I'm not a sponsor by Wells Fargo. That's a very large sponsorship. But no, Wells Fargo is very, very easy to use. All right, and then how should you communicate, or how do you not communicate? So you want to make sure you are communicating with an email that is created for your LLC and not your personal email or phone. You are not running a social chat, you're running a business, so make sure you run it through email. It's also very nice if you're able to look up later on and see, oh, this is what we previously said. All right, how often do you run your meetings typically, or at least how often should you? It would be weekly. I highly recommend doing that, and I highly recommend doing it through a Discord server. So just create your own server or whatever. We have one, we call it partnerships, and that's it. Okay, concept review again. If you want to keep stuff organized and standardized, that is up to you at the end of the day how to do it. I would highly recommend you do a standard system. It's located right there, but otherwise your partners aren't going to be able to find stuff, and they're just going to be wasting a ton of time between everybody. So just saying, hey, where is this thing? Just cut down all the noise and chatter, put it in the exact same spot every single time. All right, where do you keep most? Where should you keep most information is in one Google Sheet. If you can put it there, put it there. Otherwise, it could be on a different file, but make sure you only have it in one spot. All right, and then difference between CapEx and repairs. Repairs are upkeep, and they write off as expenses. CapEx is improvement, and they write off as depreciation. That's the difference. So basically, if you write it off for CapEx, by the way, for depreciation, I'm sorry, if you're saying I'm going to depreciate a $70,000 CapEx item over 7 years, and you get to write off $10,000 per year. That's how that works. So you're not writing all of it off in 1 year. Versus if you repair, you're writing off the whole thing of $70,000 all in 1 year. So it's like a loss basically in that year. So you just want to do enough of that so you are optimizing your taxes. Get an SP if you want to do taxes. Honestly, it's my best advice. So I did that on my first deal. All right. What do you need to do with your work packages is be incredibly specific and make a list of everything that you're doing wrong. Be specific and make a list of everything very specifically, right? So make sure you have a definition of what right looks like. I suppose what I meant there is have a standard so you can say, hey, you did not do this correctly. And then what's the ROIC formula is going to be your net value change divided by your cost in minus 1. So if you're risk at losing of something, that's a scenario where you could call that net value change. Would be whatever you would be losing in property value. So you need to assess what is the property difference, the property value difference relative to the cost to prevent that potentially. Right? It could be value add, it could be perceived, or it could be value decrease that is prevented. And then how should you execute all of your actions for literally every action you can think of should be in the order of highest ROIC to lowest ROIC. So if you want today's slide deck, go to the QR code there on the right. Otherwise, server events are in the middle and the bootcamp dates are on the far left. So that's the URL for above. I do not have a practice problem for today, unfortunately, but I will probably upload one here in the near future. So stay tuned and feel free to go back to that resource. Cool. That's all I got for now. So thanks so much and tune in for day 5.